Snake River just kind of snuck up on us there.
There's a big thunderstorm going on right now at Tetons of the Moon. And it's coming down pretty bad. I'm hoping that we can stay the night there before we head out. So we made it to Arco last night, stayed dry while all our stuff outside got wet. After a damp and slightly soul-crushing night in a questionable Idaho motel, we were absolutely ready to get moving.
And now we are off to the Grand Tetons.
And what better way than heading back into the mountains where, if there was another storm, at least the rain comes with a view. We made it just in time to watch the sun dip behind the Teton Range, catching a glimpse of a few locals along the way. Then, as if on cue, another storm rolled in. This time we were in Wyoming, state number 5 on our journey from California to Montana.
Raining, so we came inside.
And while the storm was shorter lived than the last one, it was a stark reminder that road tripping through the West means learning to embrace whatever nature throws at you. Our goal was simple: make it from Los Angeles to Glacier National Park, camping through as many parks as possible without losing our minds or our gear. But with unpredictable weather, long stretches of empty road, and a few questionable choices ahead, we were starting to realize that keeping it together might be more of a challenge than we thought.
The boat area. We went on a boat ride at a different lake, Janny Lake. Janny. Oh, made a noise. Went to Jenny Lake, rode a boat, and it took us on an hour tour.
And little did we know, the most unexpected twist of the trip was still waiting just around the next bend.
I had got heat stroke. Andrew cried the whole time because of sunscreen in his eyes. But it was cool because we learned some cool facts about the area.
Like how Grand Teton National Park is home to some of the most dramatic, snow-capped peaks you'll ever see, rising straight out of the valley floor to create one of the country's most iconic mountain skylines.
As you stand at the Teton Glacier turnout, turn around slowly. Would you believe that you can see evidence of 3 different glaciers from here? 2 of these glacial advances happened during the Pleistocene Ice Age that ended thousands of years ago. The last glacial advance happened during a cool period called the Little Ice Age that ended in the 1850s. The Pleistocene Ice Age began as little as 2 million years ago when glaciers scoured North America numerous times. As ice sheets flowed south from Canada, ice sheets also flowed off the high plateau of Yellowstone and the surrounding mountains. Evidence left by these glaciers includes sharp mountain ridges called arêtes, U-shaped canyons, mounds of glacial debris called moraines, and cobble-covered plains washed by melting glaciers.
At the base of these towering cliffs lies Jenny Lake, formed about 12,000 years ago by glaciers carving their way through the landscape. Today, it's about 400 feet deep and one of the park's most popular spots for hiking, boating, and enjoying the views. And despite its remote feel, Jenny Lake sees nearly 1 million visitors a year, drawn by its incredible scenery and the chance to spot wildlife like moose, elk, and even the occasional bear wandering through. I just got up, so I have crazy bedhead.
I woke up and was a hero and made bacon I also made coffee and I made a fire.
It rained again.
Grand Teton National Park has over 100 alpine and glacial lakes. And next on our list was one of its largest, Jackson Lake. Here, you'll find mirror-like reflections of the Teton Range stretching across calm, glacial waters. At nearly 15 miles long, Jackson Lake is one of the largest high-elevation lakes in the country. And hiking along its shoreline gives you a front row seat to some of the park's most breathtaking scenery. It's quiet, peaceful, and feels timeless. Like the land has always held space in just this way. But the truth is, its future was anything but certain. When Congress first established the park in 1929, it only included the Teton mountain range and 6 glacial lakes at its base. The valley below, Jackson Hole, was left out on purpose. Because the idea of turning the surrounding land into part of a national park sparked fierce resistance. Wyoming residents were furious. Ranchers in particular saw it as a threat to their way of life.
This is high cow country. This is summer grazing country. Some of the best in the West. This is the country of big beef herds and vast ranches.
Around this time, Horace Albright, superintendent of Yellowstone National Park, saw what was happening just south of his jurisdiction. Ranches being sold off, land divided, and plans for roads, resorts, and billboards slowly creeping in. Albright had a vision to preserve not just the dramatic peaks of the Tetons, but the entire ecosystem. The valley, the river, the wildlife corridors. But he needed help. So he turned to John D. Rockefeller Jr., one of the most influential philanthropists of the era, who had quietly supported conservation efforts across the country. Albright invited him to visit Jackson Hole, hoping the landscape would speak for itself. Captivated by the beauty of the valley, Rockefeller agreed to help. He created the Snake River Land Company, a front used to discreetly purchase land, over 35,000 acres in total. The goal wasn't development or profit. It was to one day donate it to the American people. But once secret got out, things got complicated. Wyoming residents, especially ranchers and local politicians, saw the quiet land acquisition as a betrayal. They feared federal control, economic disruption, and the loss of perceived generational land. Despite Rockefeller paying fair market prices, the state's congressional delegation blocked every attempt to expand the park's boundaries, and the land sat in limbo. So Rockefeller went public, saying if the federal government didn't want the land, he'd sell it to the highest bidder. The message was clear: either preserve it or watch it disappear.
The great state of Wyoming is one of the strongholds of the old traditional West, famous for its historical landmarks, its wide open spaces, and prosperous ranches. So it's only fitting that our cowboy classic for today is In the Hills of Old Wyoming. Let me ride on a trail.
We spent a quick day in Jackson taking advantage of the Wi-Fi we'd been without, grabbing some tacos and strolling past shops that now depended on the very views that were once at the center of a fierce debate over who this land was really for. Because while this town feels like a gateway to the Tetons now, there was a time not that long ago when many locals would have preferred to shut the gate entirely. In 1943, in the middle of World War II, President Franklin D. Roosevelt acted. Using the Antiquities Act, he bypassed Congress and designated the contested land as Jackson Hole National Monument. That only escalated tensions. Wyoming politicians saw it as government overreach and fought hard to reverse it. The standoff lasted until 1950, when a compromise was reached. The 1929 park and the 1943 monument would be merged into an expanded Grand Teton National Park. But only after Congress passed a new law. The Antiquities Act could never again be used in Wyoming without state approval. It took decades of quiet negotiations, public outcry, and stubborn vision. But the Grand Teton we know today, with its wide valleys, alpine lakes, and jagged skyline, only exists because a handful of people believed it was worth fighting for. The state home to the first national park would become the only state with the power to stop it from happening again. Even now, some pieces of the land within the park, known as inholdings, remain privately owned, and the legacy of that conflict still plays out. Despite generating billions in tourism and supporting thousands of local jobs, national parks and public lands still face cuts to funding, staffing, and protections. The landscapes may be timeless, but caring for them has never been guaranteed. That night, because it's apparently our trip's signature feature, it rained again.
I don't mind rain and snow, I just didn't pack for it.
We decided to warm ourselves inside the nearest lodge with hot chocolate before returning to our tent for the night. The next day, soggy shoes and all, we pressed on. This time, to a quieter corner of the park, named after John D. Rockefeller Jr.'s son, Lawrence S. Rockefeller, who continued his father's vision of conservation.
Well, the Lawrence S. Rockefeller Preserve was donated to the American public to become a part of Grand Teton National Park in 2007. And Lawrence had this idea or this feeling that nature truly had this power to restore and sustain the human spirit.
The preserve is serene, thoughtfully designed, and genuinely moving. It's one of the few places in the park that seems to invite reflection as much as recreation. And I'm grateful for it. Grateful that people like the Rockefellers use their wealth and influence to protect places like this. But even here, question lingers. Protected from who and preserved for who? Because while the Rockefellers bought this land at, quote, fair market value, they didn't buy it from the Shoshone, Arapaho, Blackfoot, Crow, Nez Perce, and the other indigenous nations who lived here long before it was called Jackson Hole. They bought it from settlers, many of whom had only lived on the land for a generation or two, after treaties were signed under pressure or ignored altogether. That doesn't erase the good that came from protecting these places, but it complicates it. From the beginning, the story of America's national parks has been one of both preservation and removal, of saving land for future generations, while pushing out communities who had already cared for it for centuries. The creation of Grand Teton was no exception. It involved secret deals, backlash, and support, government intervention, protest, and compromise. A tug of war between those who wanted to keep the landscape as they saw it, and those who already called it home, or hoped to make it their own. Even today, that tension remains in the way that we talk about who saved the land and who gets to visit it, in who's honored on the plaques and who isn't. The national parks are beautiful. They're also complicated.
Went to Jacksonville yesterday because it was raining and did some work, caught up on emails, all that fun stuff. And then yeah, we went shopping for the next week coming up, and went back to camp, and it rained, and now we're headed to Yellowstone. So bye, Grand Tetons.